This is Lady Diana Spencer. She was later known as the Lady Diana Beauclerk. Lady Diana was a fascinating character of the 18th century, and she's one that features in my book, so I thought I'd shed more light on her life here. Her life was actually quite epic tale. It's one that includes scandal, love, divorce, affairs, and even incest. So let's get into it. Lady Diana was born in 1734, and she was the daughter of the future 3rd Duke of Marlborough. She was born into the aristocratic Spencer family, and yes, she is one of the ancestors of Lady Diana Spencer, Princess of Wales. In this family portrait, we can see her with her mother and father and siblings, and over there on the right is Lady Diana. She was the eldest child of the family, and we can see her there with her younger brother. Lady Diana is actually a renowned artist, and many of her works survive to this day, and this is a self-portrait. And here's another example of one of her paintings or sketches. In her early 20s, she was married to Frederick St. John, the 2nd Viscount Bolingbroke, seen here. His nickname was actually Bully, and he was a man who loved drinking, gambling and whoring, so this marriage was doomed to fail from the very beginning. He led a very extravagant lifestyle, and he bred racehorses, so he was always at the races trying to win money. He basically just wanted to maintain his bachelor style despite being married, and he indulged in a string of affairs, and he did this quite publicly. Lady Diana was deeply unhappy, but despite their terrible marriage, she bore 4 children. And while this was all going on, Lady Diana actually had a job. She was a lady of the bedchamber, so a courtier for Queen Charlotte when she had just moved to the country. She was a lady of the bedchamber from 1762 to 1768. But although she was trapped in a horrible, horrible marriage, she was not going to take it lying down, and so she embarked upon an affair of her own. She fell head over heels in love with Topham Beauclerk. However, because of the double standards of the day, society was absolutely scandalised by Lady Diana's audacity to have an affair in public. Lord Bolingbroke was equally angry, and he took this as an affront and so took her to court. Back in the 18th century, it actually took an Act of Parliament for a divorce to be agreed. It was an expensive process, and it was a public process, and so the fact that Lord Bolingbroke did this was a sign that he really wanted to end the marriage. And this was good for Lady Diana because she also wanted to get out of the marriage. Lord Bolingbroke put his wife on trial for adultery, or as it was known back then, criminal conversation. And this did take place in a full-blown court with witnesses coming in to say that yes, they'd seen Lady Bolingbroke fornicating with Topham Beauclerk. It was sensational. Anyway, the divorce was granted. Lady Diana was delighted, and only 2 days later she married Topham Beauclerk, thinking that finally she was destined to have a happy life. She and Topham had 3 children. And for a while their life was actually very enjoyable and very cordial, and it seemed as though Lady Diana had her wish. Unfortunately, her happiness was not to last, as her second husband later turned out to be rather unpleasant and actually abusive towards her. I'm reading some of this from my book, and I wrote, he was plagued by ill health and addicted to laudanum, and so Beauclerk took little interest in personal hygiene, and he soon became infested with lice. Anyway, her second husband died of natural causes, and so she was then free to live a happy widowhood. Lady Diana set up home here in this villa in the leafy suburb of Twickenham in London. And there she was able to dedicate herself to her family and to her love of art. And she regularly engaged in interior decoration. And Horace Walpole, who was a commentator of the time, he wrote this: Lady Di Beauclerk is painting a room at her charming villa that I have christened Spencer Grove. It is nothing but a row of lilacs and festoons and green paper, but executed in as great a style as Michelangelo would have done for a Pope's villa. She was basically very talented at painting flowers and trellises upon the walls to make it look as though the garden was inside. And here she sketched her second cousin, the famous Duchess of Devonshire. As well as painting and sketching, she did designs for Wedgwood, the famous potterer, and this is one of her designs that came into fruition. And Horace Walpole, her great friend, commissioned this amazing cabinet to store her artworks in. And if we zoom in, you can see that the front of the cabinet is again decorated with her art. However, disaster was brewing and it was centering around her children. So these are two of her daughters. They were twins, Elizabeth and Mary, and they were born in her second marriage. And the other contender in this scandal was her first son from her first marriage, George St. John, now the 3rd Viscount Bolingbroke. And basically what happened was that these two, so their half-siblings, engaged in a romantic and sexual affair. George was actually already married, but he fell in love with his younger half-sister. They were 5 years apart. They ended up having 3 children together, and George eventually abandoned his wife, and he and Mary went off to France to live, I guess, as husband and wife. This affair had been conducted in secret, and Lady Diana had no knowledge of it. When the news broke in the papers, Lady Diana was absolutely scandalised, as was the whole of society. But Lady Diana could not believe that her children had done that, and had done it so secretly. I really feel sorry for Lady Diana because she had to basically retreat even further from society. She thought that she had got her retirement sorted and a happy life, but no, all of those gossip mongers were looking at her and she was tainted by association. As a result, and to avoid society and all those gossipers, she packed up her stuff and she moved to a smaller cottage in Petersham, which is close to Twickenham, and she basically threw herself into her art. She again threw herself into the decoration of her new house, and this is one of the surviving sort of part of a panel that she designed, and you can see this beautiful flowers, these beautiful leaves and trellis work. And here is another panel, a full surviving panel from that house that she designed and painted to decorate her home. So Lady Diana actually led a very retired life until her death in 1808. But what of those children? What happened to them? Whilst abroad, Mary had given birth to another son, so that meant that they had 4 sons together. But George was rubbish to the end. He later abandoned Mary. He abandoned Mary for a Belgian noblewoman and persuaded this noblewoman to marry him bigamously, because remember, he still had a wife and children back in the UK. And what of Mary? Well, Mary found herself a husband. She found a Bavarian count. She married him and they also had children. So there you go, a woman with a very fascinating life, and you can read about it in my book Hidden Patrons, which is available in all good bookshops as well as Amazon, etc.